Senior Observer Clicks here, reporting from the Galactic Survey ship Endless Patience. And today, I witnessed something that will probably get me demoted, fired, or possibly committed to a psychiatric facility. You see, there are certain universal constants in our galaxy. Gravity pulls things down, stars burn hot, and apex predators do not, under any circumstances, giggle at bureaucratic procedures while wearing tiny spectacles. Well, apparently nobody told the Thornback cubs on planet Nexus 7 about that last one. The whole mess started when Dr. Zoe Winters, a human xenobiologist, was assigned to study the native Thornback population. These creatures are basically walking nightmares, standing 12 feet tall with razor-sharp spines, teeth that could bite through starship hull plating, and claws designed by evolution's most sadistic engineer. They hunt in coordinated packs, communicate through subsonic growls, and have been classified as extremely dangerous, non-sapient predators for the past 2 centuries. Dr. Winters took one look at the classification report, laughed so hard she nearly choked on her coffee, and promptly threw the entire manual in the recycling unit. Non-sapient, she said to her recording device, while setting up camp directly in the middle of prime Thornback territory. We'll see about that. 3 months later, I received an urgent transmission from the planetary survey station. Immediate assistance required. Situation has become unusual. When a career bureaucrat describes something as unusual, it generally means reality has taken a hard left turn into the impossible. I arrived expecting to find Dr. Winters either dead or cowering behind defensive barriers. Instead, I found her sitting cross-legged in a forest clearing, surrounded by 6 juvenile Thornbacks who were paying attention. Not hunting her, not stalking her, not even showing the slightest aggressive posture. They were sitting in a perfect semicircle, watching her with what could only be described as fascination. "Oh, hello there," Dr. Winters called cheerfully as my transport landed. "Perfect timing. We're just finishing today's lesson on basic physics. Razor, would you demonstrate momentum conservation for our visitor?" The largest cub, apparently named Razor, picked up a metal sphere with delicate precision and rolled it toward a stationary object. When they collided, the stationary object moved while the first stopped, and Razor made a sound that can only be described as purring with satisfaction. I checked my universal translator 3 times. It was definitely working. The sound it produced was, "Newton's first law successful demonstration complete." Let me repeat that for emphasis. A 12-foot-tall apex predator had just spoken about classical mechanics, in perfect standard galactic no less. "Dr. Winters," I managed to croak through my suddenly dry throat. "What exactly have you been doing here?" "Teaching," she replied with that infuriating human tendency to state the obvious, as if it explained everything. These cubs are incredibly intelligent. They just needed someone to recognize it and provide appropriate educational opportunities. "Educational opportunities," I repeated slowly. "For apex predators." "Apex learners," corrected a cub with distinctive silver markings around her eyes. "We prefer the term apex learners. The predator classification is so limiting, don't you think?" The universal translator informed me this was the cub designated Whisper, and her tone carried what humans call sarcasm. A Thornback had just used sarcasm on me. My worldview made several alarming creaking sounds and started showing structural damage. Dr. Winters beamed with maternal pride. "Whisper has been working on verbal irony and comedic timing. She's quite talented at it." "Comedic timing," I said faintly. "The 12-foot murder machine has comedic timing." "We all do," chimed in another cub, this one with unusual blue-tinted spines. "Thorn here specializes in observational humor. Claw prefers puns, Spike enjoys wordplay, and Fang has developed quite the repertoire of bureaucratic satire." As if summoned by the mention of his specialty, Fang stepped forward and cleared his throat, and sound that vibrated through my chest cavity. "Observer Clicks, we've reviewed your incident reports from the past 5 years, and we must say, your documentation style is admirably thorough. However, we noticed 17 instances where you used the phrase, 'within acceptable parameters,' to describe situations that were clearly beyond any reasonable definition of acceptable." I stared at the creature. You've been reading my reports? Dr. Winters provided us access to the Galactic Survey database as part of our research methodology training, Fang explained. We found your work quite illuminating, particularly your tendency to downplay obviously extraordinary events through bureaucratic language. For instance, last year's report describing the spontaneous appearance of a temporal anomaly as a minor scheduling irregularity was absolutely brilliant in its understatement. The Predator was critiquing my writing style, with legitimate points. Dr. Winters chuckled. They're excellent at literary analysis, too. Claw wrote a fascinating paper on the use of metaphor in official imperial documentation. It's really quite revealing, Claw added helpfully. The repeated use of passive voice to avoid assigning responsibility, the strategic deployment of technical jargon to obscure simple concepts, the systematic replacement of clear statements with ambiguous bureaucratic phrases. It's like watching someone perform verbal contortionism. I felt a stress headache building behind my optical sensors. Dr. Winters, surely you understand that these are dangerous predators. They have natural hunting instincts, territorial behaviors, aggressive tendencies. Razor interrupted gently. We had those behaviors. Then Dr. Winters taught us about ethics, philosophy, and social cooperation. Turns out, hunting and killing things is actually quite inefficient when you can simply ask for what you need and negotiate mutually beneficial arrangements. You negotiated with them? We negotiated with her, Whisper corrected. Dr. Winters wanted to study our behavior patterns. We wanted to understand why she wasn't afraid of us. The logical solution was collaborative research with shared knowledge exchange. They made me a deal, Dr. Winters explained. They'd let me study their natural behaviors and social structures, and in exchange, I'd answer their questions about the wider galaxy, teach them written language, and provide educational materials. Questions? I asked, though I was beginning to suspect I didn't want to know the answer. Excellent questions, Dr. Winters said proudly. Razor wanted to know about stellar formation and planetary mechanics. Whisper was fascinated by different forms of government and social organization. Thorn asked about mathematics and engineering principles. Claw showed interest in linguistics and communication theory. Spike focused on biology and evolutionary concepts. And Fang wanted to understand legal systems and bureaucratic processes. I find institutional structures absolutely riveting, Fang admitted. The way rules and regulations can be manipulated to achieve desired outcomes while maintaining the appearance of compliance is truly an art form. Take, for instance, your current situation. You're required to file a report about unusual circumstances, but your professional advancement depends on filing reports that don't make your superiors question your competency. Fascinating paradox. The philosophical implications of my career being psychoanalyzed by a Thornback were too disturbing to contemplate. I decided to focus on immediate practical concerns. Dr. Winters, regardless of their apparent intelligence, these are still classified as dangerous predators. There are safety protocols, containment procedures, mandatory reporting requirements. About those classifications, Spike interjected smoothly. We've prepared a formal appeal for species reclassification based on demonstrated cognitive capabilities and social development. He gestured toward a stack of documents that had definitely not been there when I arrived. I approached the papers cautiously. They were written in perfect standard galactic script, properly formatted according to official submission guidelines, and cross-referenced with relevant legal precedents. The mathematical proofs included in the appendices were beyond my comprehension, but they looked impressively complex. You filed legal paperwork, I said slowly. Comprehensive legal paperwork, Thorn corrected. We researched galactic law for 3 weeks before beginning the documentation process. Did you know there's no specific prohibition against apex predators applying for sapient species recognition? The original classifications were based on behavioral observations rather than cognitive testing. Cognitive testing that we've now passed, Whisper added cheerfully. All 6 of us scored above average on intelligence assessments, demonstrated proficiency in mathematical reasoning, showed mastery of multiple languages, and exhibited clear understanding of ethical principles. They took the tests voluntarily, Dr. Winters explained. I didn't even suggest it. Razor asked if there were standardized measurements for intelligence, and when I explained the concept of aptitude testing, they requested to participate. We were curious about how our intellectual capabilities compared to other sapient species, Razor said simply. Turns out, we're quite competitive academically. Competitive, I repeated. In academics. Razor scored highest in spatial reasoning and mechanical comprehension, Dr. Winters reported with obvious pride. Whisper excelled in logical analysis and critical thinking. Thorn dominated mathematical sections. Claw showed exceptional linguistic aptitude. Spike mastered scientific methodology. And Fang achieved perfect scores in legal reasoning and bureaucratic navigation. Perfect scores, I said weakly. The bureaucratic navigation section was particularly enjoyable, Fang noted. All those hypothetical scenarios about regulatory compliance and administrative efficiency. Child's play, really, once you understand the underlying logical structures. I activated my recording equipment, partly for official documentation, and partly because I needed proof that this conversation was actually happening. Let me understand this correctly. 6 juvenile Thornbacks have independently demonstrated sapient-level intelligence, filed legal appeals for species reclassification, and are currently engaging in philosophical discussions about bureaucratic theory. That's an accurate summary, Dr. Winters confirmed. Though you should also mention their artistic endeavors. Thorn has been experimenting with sculpture, Claw writes poetry, and Spike has developed quite a talent for musical composition. Musical composition? Spike stepped forward and produced what appeared to be a modified communication device. I've been working on harmonic structures that incorporate subsonic frequencies natural to our species. Would you like to hear my latest piece? It's a meditation on the concept of metamorphosis, inspired by our transition from purely instinctual beings to conscious entities. The music that emerged was hauntingly beautiful, complex harmonies weaving together in patterns that seemed to resonate with something deeper than hearing. The subsonic elements created an almost physical sensation, like standing in a vast cathedral filled with cosmic wind. When the piece ended, I realized I'd been holding my breath. That was extraordinary, I admitted. Thank you, Spike said graciously. I'm working on a full symphony exploring themes of identity, growth, and the relationship between nature and nurture. Dr. Winters suggested I might want to submit it to the Galactic Arts Council for consideration. The Galactic Arts Council, I said faintly. For consideration. Why not? Dr. Winters asked reasonably. Talent is talent, regardless of species classification. That's when Claw stepped forward with a mischievous expression that should have been impossible on a predator's face. Observer clicks. We've prepared something special for your visit. Would you like to hear a limerick I composed about galactic bureaucracy? Before I could decline, Claw launched into what can only be described as the most devastatingly accurate piece of satirical poetry I've ever heard. It rhymed perfectly, maintained proper meter, and managed to summarize every frustration I'd ever experienced with administrative procedures in exactly 5 lines. The other cubs burst into what could only be called laughter, a sound that mixed subsonic rumbles with higher-pitched vocalizations in a surprisingly musical pattern. Dr. Winters joined in, and despite my professional composure, I found myself chuckling along. That's when I realized the true horror of the situation. I was enjoying myself. These apex predators were entertaining, intelligent, creative beings with distinct personalities and genuine humor. They weren't monsters or specimens or classified threats. They were people. Dr. Winters, I said carefully, what exactly do you think will happen when I file my report about this situation? That depends entirely on how you choose to file it, Fang observed. You could follow standard protocol, describe us as dangerous anomalies requiring immediate containment, and probably get us shipped off to some research facility for invasive studies. Or ... Or, I prompted. You could recognize that you've encountered something genuinely remarkable, Dr. Winters suggested. A species that's demonstrated the capacity for rapid cognitive development when given appropriate opportunities and encouragement. Think about the implications for our understanding of intelligence, consciousness, and the potential for growth that might exist in species we've dismissed as non-sapient. The implications, I mused, would be revolutionary. Revolutionary, Whisper agreed. And absolutely hilarious. Can you imagine the bureaucratic pandemonium when 6 Thornbacks apply for university admission? University admission? I asked. We've been researching educational opportunities, Razor explained. Several of us are interested in pursuing advanced degrees in our chosen fields. I'd like to study engineering and planetary mechanics. Whisper wants to focus on political science and comparative government. Thorn is fascinated by pure mathematics. Claw plans to major in xenolinguistics, Dr. Winters added. Spike wants to study evolutionary biology and genetics. And Fang has his heart set on law school. Law school, I repeated. Constitutional law specifically, Fang clarified, with emphasis on interspecies rights and bureaucratic reform. I have several ideas for improving governmental efficiency that I'd like to pursue through proper academic channels. The thought of Fang arguing constitutional law before the Galactic Supreme Court was simultaneously terrifying and oddly appealing. His legal briefs would probably be more logically coherent than most currently practicing attorneys could manage. There's just one small problem, I pointed out. You're still classified as non-sapient predators. Universities don't accept non-sapient predators. Which brings us back to our legal appeal, Thorn noted. We need official recognition of our sapient status before we can pursue higher education. And that requires someone with governmental authority to endorse our application, Spike added meaningfully. They were all looking at me expectantly. You want me to officially recommend species reclassification? I said. We want you to tell the truth about what you've observed, Doctor, Winters said simply. Nothing more, nothing less. I looked around at the 6 cubs, each one representing a complete transformation of everything I thought I understood about intelligence, consciousness, and the nature of sapient life. They had humor, creativity, curiosity, ethics, and ambition. They had individual personalities and collective goals. They had chosen to reject their biological programming in favor of something better. They had laughed at the limitations others had placed on them and decided to become something unprecedented. All right, I said finally, but I have one condition. Name it, Razor said promptly. When you get into law school, Fang, I want you to write your thesis on bureaucratic reform. Specifically, on the systematic flaws in species classification protocols that nearly prevented 6 brilliant individuals from being recognized for what they really are. Fang's expression brightened considerably. I already have 17 pages of notes on that exact topic. Of course he did. Dr. Winters, I said, I think you may have just changed the galaxy. We changed the galaxy, she corrected gently, gesturing toward her students. I just provided the initial push. They did all the real work. As I prepared to leave and compose what would certainly be the most unusual report of my career, I couldn't help but smile. Somewhere in the depths of bureaucratic machinery, a few officials were about to have their day thoroughly ruined by paperwork filed by 6 apex predators with law degrees in their future. It was going to be absolutely hilarious. 2 weeks later, I stood in the most surreal courtroom proceedings of my 300-year career, watching Supreme Magistrate Quell attempt to maintain judicial dignity, while 6 Thornbacks sat politely in the defendant's section, each wearing tiny reading glasses and taking notes on legal pads. This tribunal will come to order, Magistrate Quell announced, her voice carrying the weary tone of someone who'd already reviewed 17 impossible case files before breakfast. Case number 7749XK, application for species reclassification, filed by, well, this is unprecedented. 6 concerned citizens seeking equal recognition under galactic law, Fang interjected helpfully, rising to address the court with perfect procedural form. Your Honor, we've prepared opening statements, supporting documentation, and character references from 17 different academic institutions. The magistrate's third eye twitched involuntarily. Mr. Fang, you are currently classified as a dangerous predator. Dangerous predators do not file legal motions. Respectfully, Your Honor, that classification is precisely what we're here to contest, Fang replied smoothly. According to Galactic Legal Code Section 47B, any entity demonstrating cognitive capacity sufficient for legal understanding may petition for status review. We believe we've exceeded those requirements considerably. Considerably, muttered Prosecutor Vex from across the aisle, shuffling through evidence files with obvious bewilderment. Your Honor, I've been practicing law for 60 years, and I've never encountered defendants who submitted their own legal briefs, cross-referenced case precedents, and included footnoted rebuttals to anticipated prosecution arguments. We wanted to be thorough, Whisper explained cheerfully. Razor calculated a 73.6% probability that incomplete documentation would result in automatic dismissal, so we decided to address every conceivable legal challenge in advance. Magistrate Quell examined the submitted materials with growing astonishment. These briefs are actually quite impressive. The legal reasoning is sound, the precedent citations are accurate, and the argumentative structure demonstrates sophisticated understanding of constitutional principles. Claw helped with the literary style, Spike noted. We wanted our arguments to be both legally compelling and rhetorically persuasive. The alliteration in Section 12 was particularly effective, Claw added modestly, though I'm still not entirely satisfied with the concluding paragraph's rhythmic flow. Prosecutor Vex stood up abruptly. Your Honor, I motion for immediate recess. I need time to research legal strategies for prosecuting defendants who are better prepared than my entire staff. Motion denied, Magistrate Quell replied. Prosecutor Vex, please present your case against species reclassification. What followed was perhaps the most one-sided legal argument in galactic history. Prosecutor Vex attempted to present evidence of dangerous predatory behavior, only to have Thorn politely point out statistical errors in the data analysis. When Vex cited historical precedents for maintaining species classifications, Razor quietly corrected his interpretation of 3 different legal codes. Whisper offered helpful suggestions for improving his argumentative structure, while Spike provided additional research sources that directly contradicted his conclusions. This is highly irregular, Prosecutor Vex complained after his 4th objection was overruled by defendants citing procedural regulations he'd apparently forgotten. Your Honor, the defense is coaching each other during active proceedings. The defense is demonstrating collaborative problem-solving capabilities, Dr. Winters observed from the gallery, which, incidentally, is excellent evidence of advanced cognitive development and social cooperation. Dr. Winters, Magistrate Quell said carefully, would you please explain to this court how 6 apex predators learned constitutional law in 3 months? They're extremely motivated students, Dr. Winters replied simply. Once they understood that legal knowledge could help them achieve their educational goals, they approached jurisprudence with the same systematic thoroughness they applied to every other subject. We read every case reference in the Galactic Legal Database, Fang explained proudly. All 847,000 cases, cross-indexed by topic, jurisdiction, and legal precedent. Fascinating reading, really, though the redundancy in administrative law is quite remarkable. You read the entire legal database, Magistrate Quell said faintly. Twice, Whisper added. We wanted to be sure we understood the historical context and evolutionary development of interspecies rights legislation. The second reading focused on identifying systematic inconsistencies and logical gaps in current regulatory frameworks, Thorn noted. We've prepared a supplementary brief outlining suggested improvements to 17 different legal codes. Prosecutor Vex made a strangled sound. Your Honor, they're trying to reform galactic law as a hobby project. Intellectual exercise, Spike corrected gently. Though we would be happy to submit our recommendations through proper channels if the court is interested. Let me understand this situation, Magistrate Quell said slowly. 6 beings classified as non-sapient predators have independently mastered galactic law, identified flaws in legal frameworks that professional attorneys missed, and are now offering to help improve governmental efficiency. That's an accurate summary, Razor confirmed. Though you should also mention our academic achievements. We've all been accepted to universities pending resolution of our legal status. Accepted, Magistrate Quell repeated. Provisionally accepted, Claw clarified. Nexus University was particularly enthusiastic about my linguistics research proposal. Professor Kren said my analysis of subsonic communication patterns could revolutionize interspecies translation protocols. The Engineering Institute offered me a full scholarship, Razor added. Apparently, my theoretical work on gravitational manipulation engines impressed their review committee. Political Science Department at Central Academy wants to publish my comparative government thesis, Whisper noted. Professor Yax called it groundbreaking research into democratic evolution across diverse cultural contexts. Dr. Winters beamed with maternal pride. Thorne's mathematical proofs solved 3 long-standing computational problems. Spike's biological research proposal earned endorsements from 4 department heads, and Fang's preliminary legal scholarship has already been cited in 2 academic journals. Cited, Prosecutor Vex said weakly. By professors who don't know we're technically classified as dangerous animals, Fang admitted. We've been corresponding with academic colleagues under our legal names without mentioning our species classification. Our research speaks for itself. Your legal names, Magistrate Quell noted. We chose them ourselves, Thorne explained. Another demonstration of self-determination and personal identity development. Very important legal concepts in sapience recognition cases. That's when the courthouse doors burst open and Director Krex from the Galactic Science Council stormed in, followed by 3 university deans, 2 research administrators, and someone I recognized as the editor of the Journal of Xenological Studies. Your Honor, Director Krex announced breathlessly, we demand immediate intervention in these proceedings. Our institutions have been unknowingly collaborating with unregistered sapient entities. Unregistered by choice, Fang pointed out reasonably. We've been trying to register through proper legal channels. This tribunal is literally the registration process. Dr. Narek, Director Krex continued, gesturing toward one of the university deans, has been corresponding with Mr. Thornback for 6 weeks about advanced gravitational theory. She had no idea she was exchanging research notes with a 12-foot predator. Height discrimination is specifically prohibited under educational access regulations, Razor observed mildly. Though I understand the initial surprise, I did mention in my application materials that I might require custom-sized laboratory equipment. Dr. Narek stepped forward, looking somewhat dazed. Your Honor, I've reviewed Mr. Thornback's theoretical work extensively. His insights into gravitational field manipulation are genuinely revolutionary. If he's really... She gestured vaguely at Razor. If this individual authored those equations, then we're looking at one of the most promising engineering minds I've encountered in 40 years of academic work. He did, Dr. Winters confirmed proudly. All their academic work is entirely original. The linguistic research from Mr. Subsonic has already influenced departmental policy, added Professor Yax. We've implemented 3 of his suggested improvements to our translation protocols with remarkable success. Claw nodded graciously. Interspecies communication has always fascinated me. The way different anatomical structures create unique phonetic possibilities offers tremendous potential for expanding expressive range across species barriers. You're telling me, Professor Yax said slowly, that a Thornback developed improvements to our translation systems. A Thornback with extensive research experience in comparative linguistics, Claw corrected politely. My predatory background actually provided unique insights into subsonic communication that traditional academic training might have overlooked. The journal editor stepped forward, clutching a datapad. Your Honor, we published Mr. Legal Mind's analysis of bureaucratic efficiency in our latest issue. It's already been downloaded 200,000 times and cited in 14 different research papers. If we discover our most popular author is technically a dangerous animal, technically a misclassified sapient being seeking proper legal recognition, Fang corrected smoothly. And I'm delighted that my work has generated such positive response. I have several follow-up articles in preparation that should interest your readers considerably. Magistrate Quell buried her face in her hands. This is completely unprecedented. We have 6 beings who were classified as dangerous predators, but who have individually achieved academic recognition that exceeds most registered sapient species. Not to mention, Dr. Winters added helpfully, they've already begun contributing to galactic society in meaningful ways. Thorne's mathematical work has practical applications for 17 different engineering projects. Spike's biological research could improve food production on 12 agricultural worlds. Whisper's political analysis has been referenced in 3 different governmental policy discussions. Policy discussions? Magistrate Quell asked weakly. The Outer Rim Council requested copies of my research on democratic representation in diverse populations, Whisper explained. Apparently, my recommendations for improving participatory government have generated significant interest among progressive political movements. Progressive political movements, Prosecutor Vex muttered. Now the predators are influencing galactic politics. The concerned citizens are participating in democratic discourse, Dr. Winters corrected firmly. Which, incidentally, is exactly what we should want from all intelligent beings, regardless of their biological origins. Director Krex activated his communication device. Your Honor, I've just received confirmation from the Academic Standards Committee. Based on their demonstrated research capabilities and scholarly contributions, all 6 applicants meet or exceed requirements for advanced academic standing. Advanced academic standing, Magistrate Quell repeated numbly. We're prepared to offer full scholarships, research positions, and accelerated degree programs, Dr. Narek added. Honestly, individuals of this caliber shouldn't be wasting time with undergraduate coursework. They're ready for graduate-level research. Immediately. Graduate-level research, Prosecutor Vex said, in a voice that suggested his worldview had suffered structural collapse. Though we would appreciate expedited resolution of their legal status, Professor Yax noted. It's rather difficult to arrange dormitory accommodations for students who are technically classified as dangerous wildlife. Dormitory accommodations, Magistrate Quell whispered. We've been discussing living arrangements, Razor said helpfully. Standard dormitories probably aren't designed for our physical requirements, but we have several practical solutions that would work well for both us and our fellow students. Fellow students, Prosecutor Vex said, apparently stuck in echo mode. The integration process should be quite manageable, Whisper added optimistically. We've researched interspecies social dynamics extensively and developed comprehensive strategies for positive community engagement. Community engagement, Magistrate Quell said faintly. That's when Thorn stood up and addressed the court with mathematical precision. Your Honor, we've calculated the statistical probability of 6 non-sapient beings independently achieving advanced academic recognition, contributing original research to multiple scientific fields, mastering galactic legal code, and demonstrating collaborative social skills. The probability is approximately 0.001%. Which means, Spike continued logically, either we represent an impossible statistical anomaly, or the original species classification was fundamentally incorrect. Occam's razor suggests the simplest explanation, Fong concluded, with lawyerly satisfaction. We were never non-sapient predators. We were unrecognized sapient beings who needed appropriate educational opportunities to demonstrate our true capabilities. The courtroom fell completely silent. Finally, Magistrate Quell spoke. In 40 years of judicial service, I have never encountered a case where the defendants presented a more compelling argument than their own existence. She paused, reviewing her notes one final time. The evidence clearly demonstrates cognitive abilities, academic achievement, social cooperation, ethical reasoning, and creative expression consistent with advanced sapient development. Furthermore, she continued, the applicants have already begun contributing positively to galactic society through research, scholarship, and civic participation. Denying recognition would not only be legally indefensible but would deprive our civilization of 6 obviously talented individuals. She raised her judicial gavel. Species reclassification approved. Legal status updated to full sapient citizenship with all associated rights and privileges. The gavel fell with finality that echoed through galactic history. Congratulations, Doctor, Winters said softly. Citizens. 6 newly recognized sapient beings exchanged glances filled with joy, triumph, and just a hint of mischief. Thank you, Your Honor, Fang said formally. We look forward to contributing positively to galactic society as fully recognized citizens. And, Whisper added with unmistakable satisfaction, to pursuing our academic goals without bureaucratic interference. Though, Claw noted thoughtfully, we should probably mention that we've been in contact with several other Thornback communities who have expressed interest in similar educational opportunities. Magistrate Quell's eye twitched again. Several other communities? 47 tribes, to be precise, Thorn said helpfully. We've shared our educational resources and legal research quite extensively. Many of our cousins are eager to follow similar paths toward academic achievement and citizenship recognition. 47 tribes, the magistrate repeated faintly. The liberation of intellectual potential tends to be contagious, Dr. Winters observed with obvious delight. Once beings realize they're capable of more than their prescribed limitations, word spreads quickly. Word spreads, Prosecutor Vex whispered. Your Honor, Razor said politely. We should probably also mention that we've established communication with several other species that have been classified as non-sapient but show signs of advanced cognitive potential. Other species, Magistrate Quell said weakly. Educational outreach is part of our civic responsibility as newly recognized citizens, Spike explained. We believe strongly in expanding opportunities for intellectual development across all potentially sapient beings. All potentially sapient beings, the magistrate repeated. Which, according to our preliminary research, includes approximately 63 currently non-recognized species across the galaxy, Fang noted casually. We've prepared detailed analyses of each case with recommendations for appropriate assessment protocols. The courthouse erupted in pandemonium as the implications sank in. 63 species, hundreds of thousands of potentially sapient beings who had been classified as wildlife, just waiting for someone to recognize their true capabilities. Dr. Winters laughed with pure delight. Your Honor, I think we're about to see the greatest expansion of galactic citizenship in recorded history. And, Whisper added with unmistakable glee, the greatest bureaucratic revolution since the founding of the Galactic Council. The paperwork alone is going to be legendary, Fang observed with professional appreciation. As I filed my final report on the case that changed everything, I couldn't help but smile. 6 cubs had refused to accept the limitations others placed on them, laughed in the face of bureaucratic classification, and copied the human approach of seeing potential instead of problems. They had transformed not just themselves, but the entire galaxy's understanding of intelligence, growth, and possibility. And yes, the paperwork was absolutely legendary.